Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a quick video going over how I go about painting industrial terrain. If you're anything like me, you've probably got a stack of this sort of stuff at home that you bought, intended to paint, and never got round to. It's a really easy, quick method, and will help you get the stuff on the table ready for games in no time. I was lucky enough to get hold of this piece from the latest Kill Team box recently, and I wanted to do something a bit different with it. I wanted to add some extra bits onto it to add some height and to make it a bit different, but I was also going to give myself one afternoon to do this. Space Marine for scale. As you can see, it's quite a big piece of plastic, this. It's a nice line of sight blocking piece, but I think I just could add more to it and make it a bit more interesting. So I tipped out all these bits and pieces that I've been collecting over the years to see what I could add to make it a bit more unique. It's pretty clear from the design that they intended to be able to add these different Sector Mechanicus bits onto it. Unfortunately, you can't buy these particular pieces anymore, but I've managed to pick them up on eBay a few years back and have been sitting in my collection for a while. I did sort of paint them up a while back, but the intention here is to redo them all so the whole thing is one unified piece. Now, while I was going through all my bits and pieces, I found this bowl, which I used to mix oil paints in, and it just happens to fit perfectly onto this circle on the base. So the next thing to do is to kind of add some detail onto this. So bringing out all the plastic hard tubes and wires and all these other bits and pieces, going to start adding some texture onto it. I held onto a few of these cable ties that they're very useful for putting extra texture onto things. Really great for making industrial bases and just adding some extra detail onto things. Super cheap too. I then cut some plastic hard tubes down to size and then sort of started to bend them to get the right shape and then gluing them onto the side of the bowl. I also did the same thing again, but horizontally to join some of them together, just to add a little bit more detail as well. I didn't go mad with any of this. I could have spent hours adding everything and completely covering the entire bowl with texture and bits and pieces. But again, I just kind of wanted to get all this done in one afternoon, so I've kept it quite minimal, but it's enough to kind of just disguise the fact that it's a bowl and add some more detail to it. And this bit of wire that I'm adding is from an old Cat 6 cable, an old data cable. If you've watched my recent Gene Stealer Cult video, then you'll sort of see how I've been using that. It's nice and really flexible, and if you've got a length of that cable that's you don't need anymore, you get reams of this stuff for absolutely nothing. I then added a few of these little lights that came with an old Games Workshop terrain kit. This will help to add a bit more detail, but also tie it in with the rest of the building. And then just to finish this piece off, I glued on this Sector Mechanicus smokestack, and this piece will all finish now, and hopefully when painted will blend in with the rest of the building. Just to finish this off though, I added some super glue around the join just to kind of make this a little bit stronger, and also added a little bit of my homemade basing material into it. This has got a mixture of sand and tile grout and a few other bits and pieces, and when it's all dry it will help to make a really nice strong bond, and will also, when painted, add to the kind of rough, rusty, dirty look as well. When I was searching through all my bits and pieces in my box, I found this little satellite dish. Now this actually came from a Star Wars Shatterpoint starter set, and I thought it might be quite nice to use this. But just to kind of 40k up a little bit, I glued on this piece onto the end, just to kind of, again, help to blend it in and add a little bit more detail to it. It just helps it make it a little bit more 40k. And here it is with everything glued in. A little bit messy at the moment with all the different colours, but hopefully when primed it will all blend together quite nicely. And here we are a short while later after a nice black prime, all blended together, all those little bits sort of hidden, and it all starts to look a bit more unified and like a single piece. And now on to painting. I'm using this really cheap acrylic paint from the Works. If you're in the UK, it's a great place if you go and pick up sort of cheaper paints and brushes and things like that. Perfect for this sort of work. And literally just splodging this all on. If you're using Games Workshop stuff, you could maybe use something like Thondir Brown or maybe Rhinox Hide. Or again, if you can get hold of a brown spray, use that as well. I just wanted to kind of demonstrate how this is a nice easy way of going about it. Again, if you've got an airbrush you can use that, but again not everybody has one. This is just a quick easy way of doing it. I just basically just going around stabbing it on, waiting for the whole thing to dry, and then going back over it again with a second coat to get a nice solid colour on it. But again, it doesn't really matter if you can't get into every little detail, because it will just be black showing through. It will all sort of blend together and just add some depth to it as well. And this is the result when it's all dry, already getting a nice sort of dirty industrial look. Obviously a few more steps to add now. To help break up the brown and to add a bit more interest and some more colour, I added some Incubi Darkness with a sponge. Just splodging this on randomly, just trying to get some sort of texture and some colour on there. I then did the same thing again using Dark Reaper, which is a slightly lighter bluey grey. Again, all this is doing is just helping to break the brown up, add some colour, add some interest, and also help to add some highlights as well to the very edges of everything. The next step was then to give everything a dry brush using Mornfang Brown, which is a really nice orangey brown rusty colour. Then just to finish off these highlights, I then added some Riser Rust. Going over the same process again, just dry brushing all over, but kind of concentrating more to the very edges. Again, this would just help to add a bit more depth to it and add to the rusty, grungy industrial look too. As a next step, I then did the same thing, but this time using some lead belcher. I was very sparing with this though, because I didn't want it to brighten it up too much. I didn't want it to look like new metal. I wanted this to be sort of like rough and dirty and industrial. So just been quite sparing with it, just catching the very edges on a few select little bits. I then used some Abaddon Black to give a very heavy dry brush over the tops of the two smokestacks. This would just add to the weathering and to the idea that at one time there was lots of smoke and soot and dust and everything coming out of these. As a final step with the black, I added some big splodges onto some random select pieces. Got most of the paint off with the brush and then started just to work this in and to blend it in. Again, this would just help to add to the weathering and the old age look of everything. And this is how it was looking after all these steps were done. I'm actually really happy with this as it is. I think you could probably just get away with just keeping this and not really adding else to it. But I wanted to add a little bit more detail just to make it a few little bits pop out a little bit more. So I've started using a little bit of iron break, which is a really nice bright silver, just to pick out a few of the pipes, not going too mad, just a few here and there. I wanted to get this done in an afternoon, as I said, so I'm not going too crazy and adding too much detail. But you could, if you wanted to, if you had the time, go around and just pick out loads of detail and everything and really make everything pop. There are quite a few of these little AdMech symbols that are dotted around all over the buildings as well, so I've just given each of them a quick coat using Ironbreaker just to pick them out a little bit more. As a final step for the details, I picked a nice bright red and a nice bright blue and just went around, picked out a few select cables and wires and just added a little pop of colour onto everything. Again, I'm speed painting here. I want this done super fast, so I'm just picking out a few little select pieces. I'm not going too mad. I'm not painting every single cable, just enough to kind of add a little bit of colour and a little bit more interest. And as a final step, I've then added some Rattling Grime, which is fast becoming one of my absolute favourite paints. It is so useful, for, especially for this sort of thing. I put it on straight from the pot, then got a brush full of water and dumped that on top of it as well, and then just pulled everything down and blended it. Once it's all dry, it actually works really well to kind of add to that rusty, dirty look of things. If you haven't got this paint, I'd highly recommend getting some. It's really useful, especially if you want to do sort of grimy, dirty things. I've actually started using this thin down more than using Nuln Oil or Agrax Earthshade or anything like that. It works so well. And then as a final step, I then added some more Rattling Grime into a few select places and then used the same idea of putting a little bit of water on and feathering the paint out. When this is dry, it adds a really nice oily, grimy look to things. It's absolutely perfect for this sort of terrain. It just really helps to make it look like a used, grimy, dirty building. And here is the final result. All done in one afternoon, built and painted. I could have spent a lot more time on it. I could have added loads more detail, but I'm really happy with the result. It's not particularly difficult to do. It's nice and fast, and if you do have a big stack of this sort of thing at home, you could really knock this out over a weekend if you had like a big table's worth of it. It will still work perfect as well if you have MDF terrain or any resin, that sort of thing. It's just a quick way of getting it done. I really hope this has been useful, and thank you so much for all the support, and thank you for watching, and I will see you all soon.